Good afternoon, friends. Welcome to my channel. My name is Bernard. Today, I want to talk about a memorable and not very much remembered musician who was very, very influential when I was growing up in San Francisco. I'm referring to the concertmaster of San Francisco Symphony, Jacob Krachmalnik. I knew Maestro Krachmalnik as a child growing up in San Francisco since he was Joseph Kripp's concertmaster. I remember Krachmalnik coming to San Francisco with Maestro Kripps, but I never had opportunity to actually study privately with him. However, my teacher, Zava Malikian, who was also a member of the orchestra, the assistant concertmaster, spoke of Jake often at my lessons, praising highly his playing and his knowledge of all things musical. Mr. Malikian would talk a lot, especially about Jake's amazing ability to understand effective bowing, turning the San Francisco Symphony strings into a sound reminiscent of the famous Philadelphia Orchestra strings. Jake knew bow distribution and how to make a string section sound best. One night, this was, I don't remember, in that same period of time, one night Isaac Stern was going to be the soloist with San Francisco in the Sibelius Violin Concerto. So I said, hey, I'll go to that concert. And I hadn't been to the Opera House for some time. I remember the concert was to include La Forza del Destino Overture by Verdi, then Sibelius, and after intermission, the Brahms Fourth Symphony. I knew the Sibelius, of course, as a young student violinist. I had heard it. Matter of fact, I think I'd heard Isaac Stern play his recording. And so I'd heard it many times on record, but I didn't know the Brahms and I didn't know the Overture by Verdi. So, there's the night comes and it's beautiful, the Opera House. I was sitting upstairs, very dark, warm place, very, very exciting place to hear music. The opening notes of the Verdi blew my mind. Jake led the section from concertmaster with energy and a huge presence. The strings sound so rich and full. I never heard a symphony sound that way before. So I was just amazed. Stern came out and played great. So exciting, what a great interpretation. The last movement, he just really nailed it. I figured, what the heck, I'll just stay and listen to the Brahms. I wouldn't go home early. Oh my God. I was so blown away by that piece. What a piece of music. Magical. And with Jake leading the strings, the sounds were magnificent. I still remember the name of the guest conductor, Sixten Ehrling. I never met up with him again. As I recall, he was at that time the concertmaster of New Orleans Symphony, and I'm pretty sure I'm right, but I might be wrong. But Sixten Ehrling, not a well-known guest conductor, but that was such a memorable concert. So far my connection to Jake was from my teacher, Zavin, talking about bow distribution, and then this concert with the huge, rich string sounds from the orchestra. And little did I dream that within a year I'd be playing in that orchestra with Jake and experiencing firsthand how he worked with the string section and conductors, and also where I sat in the second violin section, I could see him and hear him play every day. Make no mistake, Jake was a tough guy, uncompromising with his musical values, very much like Jascha Heifetz. As a result, he wasn't universally loved in the orchestras where he worked. The story goes that he was eventually let go from his concertmaster role in Philadelphia by the conductor Eugene Ormandy, because Jake insisted that when he played a concerto, Maestro Ormandy would allow Jake to make decisions about the musical phrases and dynamics. To put it simply, when he played solo, he expected Ormandy to follow him. All the rest of the year, he followed Ormandy. Well, apparently Maestro Ormandy wasn't willing to yield this power to his soloist, and after Jake was fired, Ormandy was said to have declared, never mention that man's name to me again, but never change his bowings. So he was well respected as a musician. It was just the personality was maybe difficult. When Maestro Kripps left San Francisco Symphony as music director, Seiji Ozawa was appointed, and at that time, Jake was relieved of his duties as concertmaster. Jake's last year, I was sitting in the orchestra, seeing then guest conductor Ozawa interacting with Jake, and Jake was tough and directive with the young and inexperienced Ozawa. Apparently, Maestro Ozawa had a long memory, so by the next year, he wanted a different type of personality as his concertmaster. I remember Ozawa, having this inexperience, there would be certain complicated things in scores, and he couldn't figure out what was going on. And Jake would tell him, you're doing this and you're doing that. And finally, Ozawa would get it right, but it wasn't a very good look in front of the rest of the orchestra. As an indication of Jake's toughness, and toughness on himself also, one week we were performing Ein Heldenleben, A Hero's Life by Richard Strauss. The piece has a huge solo for the concertmaster, Strauss's hero, and Jake, with his wonderful Guarneri del Gesu violin, played the solo magnificently. As an aside, Jake told me that many years earlier, when he was still a young player, as assistant concertmaster with the Cleveland Orchestra, he got a phone call from William Menig in Philadelphia to visit the violin shop at his earliest convenience. Menig's violin shop was very famous at that time. It was like the leading violin shop in the United States. Well, the Cleveland Orchestra toured to Philadelphia often, so Jake soon had a chance to stop in to see Menig. Menig knew Jake for a long time and admired his young talent. Jake had been a student at the Curtis Institute in Philadelphia, so he obviously went to the violin shop. So Menig showed Krachmalnik a Guarneri del Gesu that he had to sell, and he offered to sell it to Jake. Jake loved the violin, but he didn't have the money. He didn't have a fraction the kind of money it would take to buy that kind of violin. But Menig apparently told him, hey, look, take it, play it. You'll make plenty of money, and you could pay me later. Jake said he walked out of the violin shop walking on a cloud. It was the turning point of his career. Concertmaster positions and solo opportunities lay ahead. And of course, it wasn't difficult for him with those kind of jobs to pay for that violin. So, back to Strauss and the Hero's Life in San Francisco. The rehearsals were finished, and we played the first Wednesday night concert. The Strauss was well received, and Jake's Guarneri sounded unbelievable. He played great. The Thursday concert was well underway, starting through the Strauss, and then suddenly I see this commotion over there in the first stand. Jake's got a nosebleed. Oh my God, he's so tough, the show must go on. Somehow he gets through as a 40 to 45 minute piece, staunching the blood when he's not playing the solo part. I glanced out at the audience, seeing the drama unfold on stage. Everyone I saw had their eyes riveted on Jake with concern and disbelief that this was happening. So the associate concertmaster, who played the Stradivarius, by the way, did a creditable job. He took over playing the solo line in the final two concerts while Jake was healing. But it wasn't the same. It wasn't the equal. The sound and the soul of Jake's interpretation. That was so memorable. That same season, I was lucky to hear Jake play the famous violin solo from the Sanctus movement of Beethoven's Missa Solemnis. Another amazing, unforgettable. I've heard it played many times since then, and nobody played it like Jake. And of course, Jake was playing the Guarneri del Gesu. Those are marvelous instruments. I also heard him play the Mozart No. 3 G Major Concerto with the orchestra, as the concertmaster usually would play a one week subscription series, and he played very, very beautifully. I remember one concert we were in Berkeley in Zellerbach, and he walked out on stage, and it's a fairly small orchestra, and he bumped his violin into one of the music stands. Oh my God! And he just kind of shrugged his shoulders, went out, didn't even bat an eye. You know, I asked him later, he said, no, there was no damage to the violin. But my God, my heart fell when he bumped his Guarneri. That was something. So all in all, it was a memorable, never to be forgotten experience working with Jake for that year. I guess I was one of the lucky ones that Jake found talented enough, worth the trouble to teach the fundamentals of being a good member of the orchestra. I had had a chance maybe a couple of years earlier, maybe 3 years earlier, to play solo with the San Francisco Symphony, and Jake sat in and just listened to me and was very complimentary. I think, you know, he was just being nice to me. I don't think it was that great, but he told me he thought I was very talented. And obviously he was okay with me a few years later sitting in as a sub. I was just as a sub that year. So it was an amazing experience. Well, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed some of the story. This kind of a memorable musician, not very well remembered these days. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. And I hope to see you again on the next video. Take care.